Hey guys, I hope you're all well. Today I had the privilege of speaking to McQuilkin-Bell about living in 3 countries, her running progression, and her amazing coaching academy that she's established, which has grown significantly through word of mouth. We also get to hear from one of her athletes, Tess, who has recently achieved something huge at age group nationals. Don't forget to rate the podcast 5 stars on Spotify and have fun listening to the episode. Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of the Wave Running Podcast. This is episode number 7. We're going through them pretty quickly. We were just talking about how I've lost count already, but I'm joined here by McQuilkin-Bell. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah.
Sponsored by Hoka and Prepped Hydration. She's lived in 3 countries, which is something we have in common. And yeah, I think this will just be a pretty cool conversation about a broad range of topics today. And we're even going to get one of her athletes that she's coaching near the end of the podcast, so stay tuned for that, because she's achieved some pretty amazing things at the age of 16, or Caitlin can correct me later if I got that wrong. But yeah, I guess let's start off with, giving us a brief rundown. Where were you born? How did you get into running and that sort of stuff?
So I was born in New Zealand in Palmerston North, which is the North Island. I guess I got into running. We lived on a farm. We had, I think, almost 300 acres. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a big farm. And the earliest I remember I enjoyed running is when my family would get on a quad bike and go around the farm to get the cows and sheep and stuff. I'd get off the quad and run alongside it the entire time. And it'd be in a big long rain jacket, gumboots, and I don't know, I enjoyed running like that. And then at school, obviously, the races were only because I only lived in New Zealand until I was about, I think, 9 or 10. But then obviously I think just probably getting reasonably fit off running next to the quad bike around a farm, I did pretty well. I mean, not a lot of people train at 9 or 10 anyway. Back when I was 9 or 10, they do now. But then I just realized I was kind of good at it and I actually liked it. And then but running kind of took off more when I moved to Australia because a coach he saw me at a race and sent me a letter to start training with him. So, but yeah, pretty much running around the farm in New Zealand is what got me started.
Yeah, that's so cool. Like you said, I think a lot of people are starting at a younger age now, but I say back in our day as if we are really old, but I guess
Yeah.
in our kind of generation, I don't think many people are starting as young as they are now. So that's pretty cool how you've been in the sport for a very long time. Because, I've done a lot of research about running as well. And I feel like the more you're involved in it, the more physiological adaptations and stuff you get in terms of more capillaries, more mitochondria and all that sort of stuff. And it's just good to be in sports for the long term if you want to go a long way. So running's a long-term sport. You should be thinking about longevity. And yeah, so when you were 9 or 10, you moved to Australia, and I believe that was Queensland. Is that correct?
We moved to Queensland, and then lived in Brisbane, but Gold Coast kind of area. But yeah, it was Queensland.
Yeah, that's cool. And do you have any connections, or have you ever run with the Burt squad? Because that's the only squad that I know in Brisbane.
Yeah. Yeah. I ran for Bert in a few times when I came back from America. For the club championships, I ran for them. And then also some Queensland Athletics relays. I think it was a 3x1K state champs. I ran for them as well. But I knew some of the runners there quite well. So, but yes, I have run with them a few times. I know who they are.
Yeah, they're insane. I feel like the standard of that club is, I don't know. I feel like the
Oh,
slowest runner is sub 17 in the 5K still, or something like that. But yeah,
they've
it's
got
pretty
really
cool to see.
fast.
Yeah, like Adam Fogg as well, who I want to get on the podcast
Oh, yeah.
down the
Foggy, yeah.
line. Yeah. Talk a bit more about, being a Kiwi, but also living in Australia, because I remember you were talking about how there were some complications in terms of making an Australian team, but then you're from New Zealand.
Yeah. So I was saying we moved to Australia when I was probably, I think, about 10. And then in 2015, I ran the Australian mountain running championships, and top 3 qualified for Worlds, which is in Wales later that year, in September. And no one had and we didn't know really anything about the whole selection process. We just saw that it was on, and it was at Mount Cootha, which is an hour away from where I live, kind of in Brisbane. And so I went and ran it without really realizing what would happen if like, I don't know, I just kind of ran it. I'd just come back from America to do my recruit visits actually. So I wasn't like insanely fit, but I was just like, oh, it's a bit of fun, we'll go do it. And then, so I qualified because I came second. And so I got sent the uniform and everything. And I think obviously Australia didn't realize I was a Kiwi, and I thought, this is probably naive, but my family and I just thought if you like ran in a qualifier, you could run for that country. So then they emailed, I don't know however many days or a couple of weeks after I got the uniform later, saying, oh, actually, we can't take you because you're not a citizen. And we were like, oh, yeah. Like, it didn't even occur to us that would be a thing. And then they were like, contact Athletics New Zealand if they'll take you. So we did. And luckily enough, they said they would take me, but we tried to see if I could do a dual citizenship or swap completely. And it was going to take so long if it even got like accepted. And then I can't remember who or where it was from, but there was talk of a 2-year international stand down if I did swap. So I wouldn't be able to compete internationally for 2 years. And then Worlds is in like 4-5 months. So that wasn't going to work either. So, but luckily, yeah, so I had to go for New Zealand, but I mean, it was fine. But yeah, that was a bit confusing because we didn't really know. We should have probably looked into it more, but we didn't. But yeah, so I thought I wasn't going to go, then I was going to go, then I was going to try swap citizenship and possibly not actually compete. So it was a bit hectic, but we got there. And now I know that obviously I have to go for New Zealand. So that's fine.
Yeah, of course. And before we move in more to like the US and talk about the NCAA, I guess as a junior before you went to the US, what was your highlight of your running career? And also tell us about like one big low that you had to go through.
Well, highlights in high school, probably when I was in under 14s or under 15s, I think it was under 14s, so quite young. I won national cross country and 800 in the same year, and that was just because a lot of people were telling me I wouldn't win the 800 because like a distance runner like cross country, but that was definitely a highlight. But then probably when I was in under 20s, just before I went to America, I was still 16 at the time because I just turned 17 before I went to America. But it was under 20s at Australian Juniors, and I got second in the 1500 to Jess Hull and second in the steeple as well. And the cool thing is that because obviously Jess went to Oregon, but we were going to go to Florida together. So that was kind of cool to come first and second. And like I think like there's a photo of us with like she captioned it like future teammates because we were going to go. But then she went to Oregon. But I think that's definitely a highlight would be the under 20 nationals. But I had really bad health issues when I was kind of like 15, 16. So like year 9 and 10-ish. I just ran terrible for 2 years. I didn't get injured, but it was just a whole lot of health issues. Like we couldn't figure out the underlying issues. Lots of doctor's appointments. And so that was just like 2 years of pretty low, especially because I'd gone from doing very well at nationals to just making it. And I think more so for me, is what other people were saying, like, oh, you're a flash in the pan or a one-hit wonder or something like that. I think that didn't help with everything physically that I was going through, but I'd say that was a pretty rough time. But then we found like some really good like doctors and physios, naturopaths, all that kind of stuff, and yeah, that helped. And then I got back fine when I was under 20s. So
yeah, that's good. But did you like learn anything or try and take your mind off running a little bit as well and like reach out to friends outside of running to keep you sane a little bit during those times? Or were you still running but just not performing at the level you wanted to?
I think I was still, yeah, I'm trying to think back. I was very like driven. Like I wouldn't go to, like I was fully invested in running. Like I wouldn't go to parties, and it wasn't like my parents' choice. Like I'd rather go to training. Or I think I was even late to like, it wasn't our formal, I think it was like a garbage bag formal in year 12, like a big last hurrah thingy. And I had states that day and I turned up late to it because I was like, well, no, I have states. But so I don't think, I was still very invested in running. I mean, my family was great, and my like training friends in the squad I had back then, they were very supportive because they kind of like knew like what was going on. But yeah, I know, I'm like, they definitely had a support system, but it was rough for a while, but I also was competing in like horse riding back then. I still have horses now, but I don't compete because I don't have time. So I'd kind of also, just go and like ride my horse more. But yeah, no, I just kept going and knew that one day I would kind of get out of it. And 2 years later it happened, but it didn't feel like it was going to for a while.
Yeah, plateaus can happen for quite a while sometimes. It's very,
Mm,
annoying and sad, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, you do get through it as long as you're pretty persistent and kind of
yeah.
stick with it. And obviously, running's never linear. Like I talk about this pretty much in every podcast, but yeah, you kind of have to go through those ebbs and flows to get to where you want as well. So yeah,
Mhm.
just think of it as a long-term thing and don't stress too much when things aren't going your way because it's only going to be temporary, I guess. But yeah, what year did you go to uni? But more importantly, I know that a lot of US colleges hit up athletes and are really keeping an eye out on a lot of the, Australian and New Zealand athletics. And, they watch the championships and stuff and they're really onto it. Like everyone's messaging you at once if you do really well. So talk about how you got recruited and when you went to the US.
I started getting at first I thought it was a bit of a fake thing because I think the first offer I got was through Facebook Messenger from like a guy from like Iona or Iowa State University, I don't know. And I mentioned to my coach at the time, I was like, oh, someone's like, I thought it was a joke or like a prank. And then because my high school coach in the later years was the same coach that Jen LeKay's had, and obviously Jen went to Florida as well. And he was like, no, that's legit, you need to follow that up. And that was at the end of 2014 because I'd won the under 18 national steeple, and I think I was third in the 15 the next day. So I'd done pretty well. So I had offers start then, but then obviously I did like part-time uni the next year because I wasn't quite sure if I actually wanted to or where I wanted to go. But yeah, they just were especially after junior nationals and states, like because 2014 nationals are just December and then juniors is March, like a few months later. But they just messaged me on Facebook. I think all of them were through Facebook Messenger. And I think one or two of them somehow found my coach's email, but yeah, and they just all pretty much said the same thing, like watch your progress and what they offer and want to do a Skype or a Zoom call. Oh, we didn't have Zoom back then.
Yeah.
There's a Skype probably or MSN. But yeah, they just sent messages, and then I like researched like ones I really didn't know what the NCAA was, or what Div 1, Div 2 meant and the different conferences. But the ones that look like were doing, I looked them up. The ones that I like the look of, or the coach, I Skyped with quite a few of them, and then kind of had to narrow it down to a few to go visit. But yeah, it was just through Facebook they recruited, and then I went over like halfway through 2015, which was a month before I was meant to go to Worlds in Wales. That was in September of 2015. And so I think I flew out just the day after I turned 17. Because my birthday is like 12th of August. I think I flew out the 13th or the 14th. So I was, just 17. So quite young, but what can you do? Yeah, once I
Yeah.
realized I wanted to go like, as soon as I could. So
Yeah, for sure. And I remember you said you were in Griffith University for exercise science or something for a bit as well. Where did that come in?
yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that at Griffith in 2015 before I went. Yeah, but I could only do part-time because if you do full-time, you start your you've started your eligibility as like a college athlete. Like your timer starts. So they just kept saying
Yeah.
make sure you do full-time, because if you want the full 4 or 5 years, if you like get injured in America, if you want the full 4 or 5 years, you can't have started your clock elsewhere. It might be different now, but if you were part-time, you hadn't technically started, because if you'd done a year of full-time here, then you'd only have like 3 years left. But so yeah, I can only do part-time. Otherwise they were like, you can't have your full-time over here. So
Yeah, true. Yeah, I'm never gonna understand the NCAA like eligibility thing. It's so complicated, especially since COVID as well, where people lost a few years and got a bit of eligibility back and stuff. Like people were there for
yeah.
like 5 or 6 years now as well. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see. But yeah, she ended up going to Florida. Yeah, pretty well-known school in the US for their athletics and I think academics as well. I'm not too sure. I haven't looked into
Yeah.
the American universities too much, but
Before.
yeah, obviously a few big names as well. Like you said, Genevieve Gregson was there doing steeple, I believe. But yeah, did you ever get to meet her as well?
No, I didn't get to meet Jen. She graduated, I think, a year or two before I went over. But I had the same locker as her because it has a little kangaroo on it. Um, but I did talk to her like through Facebook Messenger the first year a few times, just about the like settling in and the process, because she had the same kind of coaching staff that I had when I first went over. So we're just kind of talking about like that and how she found things and any help, which she was really helpful with, because I was kind of going a bit crazy the first like few months over there, just because it's so different. So it was good to talk to her, who'd like another person like from Australia that'd been there, done that, with some insight on a few things. But no, I never actually met her, but we'd spoken a few times about it, because yeah, just some help was needed. So she was great.
Yeah, it's nice of her to take the time to kind of share her experience with other people because I feel like most of the time when you're doing stuff, it really helps when someone's already gone through it and can give you advice. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's quickly talk a bit more about like the process of moving countries and stuff. So obviously one thing we have in common, you were born in New Zealand and moved countries at 9 or 10. I think I moved countries when I was 8 or 9. And
Mhm.
then yeah, I also moved countries again for university like you. So let's talk about our similarities and differences in terms of experience. In terms of like, was moving countries at 9 or 10 harder, or moving countries at 17, 18? Which one was harder for you?
Definitely 17, 18. Yeah, it was definitely harder to move in the mid-teens. Is that what you found as well?
Yeah, 100%. Because I feel like when you're 9 or 10, you start the phase where you can easily make friends and stuff, and like you got so much time left in school. So yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
feel like it was that hard, and I think a lot of kids are pretty extroverted and like talk to everyone, but yeah,
Mhm.
moving countries where you don't really know anyone there, at that sort of age, like if you are sort of introverted, because I would say I am an introvert at heart, I found it pretty hard to be the first person to take the step to start a conversation and stuff. Because if you don't, then everyone in Australia or a lot of people already have friends from high school because there's not many internationals. So I feel like you get left out if you don't make the effort yourself if you're an international. So yeah, I found it pretty tough. But also in terms of like culture and stuff too, because I've lived in Asia my whole life, and then I had to move to Australia, which is not too far, I guess. And there's a lot of Asians still, but yeah, still a bit of a change. And even in terms of price, everything's more expensive compared to Thailand, which is where I spent a lot of my teenage years. So yeah, how about you? What were your main difficulties moving into the US?
Um, Probably the missing my family part. Someone had told me that the first 6 months to a year, if you can stick that out, it gets easier. So I was really trying to at least make it to a year. But yeah, miss them a lot. And also the actual running side of it, because you had to do everything as a team, which is great. Like I do miss like the team aspect of college, because you didn't get like, you always had someone to do a shakeout with, lifting with, a run with session. But first, because I trained like on my own with my coach, plus like maybe one other person every now and then for the last 2 years of high school. So then moving over where everything is so structured, but also like we had specific paces we had to do long runs at and easy runs at, and like certain groups you had to run with. And you had to lift after or before a session, whatever they said. And just like that, there was no negotiating. I really struggled with that. And the mileage was like double days, which I hadn't done in high school before. And I mean, I ultimately got injured my freshman year and was out for that whole year, which is how I was in America for 5 years, because I redshirted my freshman season apart from indoor, I think, because I was no, apart from cross country. But yeah, no, it was definitely the new onlook of like on training. It was so different. It was treated more like you're a professional, even though you're just like a young, well, not a young, but you're a teenager. But it's like everything was so like heightened and like so important, and they're like a bigger picture. Like if you didn't compete well, that could have an impact on like the other 30 people in your team, and then the coaches like job and all that. Like you want to do well because you don't want to let all these other girls down or have the blame put on you. Like that's what I found really hard, especially coming in as an international athlete. You kind of get the feeling that because they want you here and they're like paying for everything, like you have to perform. And my first college race wasn't great, and I was just like, I can't even do like the first. But it was just really hard emotionally. Making friends is great. Like the team, we clicked really, really well. But yeah, it was definitely hard. Probably I was more like hard on myself than I probably needed to be, but that's kind of how I felt. Like I had to go out here and do all this amazing things for the coaches and the team, and it didn't necessarily happen that quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I remember you told me how like the NCAA either makes or breaks you, which is like a thing that a
Yeah.
lot of people tend to say. And you can kind of see even from the outside as well. Like some people go there and really thrive and rise to the occasion and benefit from the training and all that. But some people definitely do struggle, which is, tough to see because the training that you do get put through and the pressure that is there, and it's not necessarily anyone's fault. It's just like you're kind of there and you're part of this team. And I feel like the NCAA is quite team based, even though it's an individual sport. Like you want to compete for your team. So yeah, I feel like there's like this natural pressure that there is for you to perform. And yeah, it's not easy on everyone, but I'm sure it also does make you a tougher person mentally if you kind of get through it. But I remember you also talking about how when you finished college, it was like quite abrupt because it was right when COVID was starting. But do you want to talk about how it randomly ended?
Yeah, we were, because I was still due to have an outdoor season for my senior year in 2020. And I was doing my internship at like a physical therapy place on campus. And we got a message from our head coach, Mike Holloway. And it was just that, I can't remember like word for word what it was, but basically that like outdoor seasons like cancelled, or yeah, I'm pretty sure outdoor seasons cancelled. Seniors and international students, like you're free to go. We had that afternoon and night to clear out our lockers because they were closing it down because of COVID. They didn't want it to spread. And one of our academic advisors had caught COVID and it wasn't really on campus yet. So they shut down all our academic buildings, our tutoring buildings. And then they were for like a deep clean, and they were shutting down like our athletic center where our locker rooms were. So we had that afternoon to get all our stuff out. Didn't actually get to say goodbye to him, my coaches. Like I didn't get to say goodbye to anyone because that morning we were just doing a session like normal. And then went to classes, internship, and then never saw anyone again. So that was quite hard, especially moving back when I got back to Australia, because it was a few months trying to find like flights, and because they were getting cancelled and then the connections were cancelled. And so it took a few months to actually find a flight, but yeah, had to like help go off campus. And yeah, that was that. It was literally just like, there's nothing really to do except get your stuff and go. So I didn't get the last outdoor season either. So yeah, it was just very abrupt, and it took me a while, even when I got back to Australia, to like accept it. Like I felt like like it wasn't finished, or like I was about to go back and finish the semester, but it never happened. So yeah, that was definitely a thing, and probably similar to like how you've like moving countries. Sometimes you don't always get to put down roots, or like you just get comfortable and you're moving again. And I think that's what made the move back so hard, is because I'd spent 5 years so close to like teammates and coaches, and then to have it all ripped away, and then not even like closure, goodbye kind of thing. That was just emotionally, it was really hard moving back. And then COVID, obviously everything got shut down, so it was just like everything was like went from like up here to like stopped. So it was quite interesting.
Sure. Very tough because yeah, it was just so sudden. But yeah, I guess that leads on kind of nicely to what you're doing now, because you're obviously a coach and I guess founder of the CMB Running Academy, which is like a pretty big squad. Obviously CMB stands for the initials of your name, I assume, but you have, I think it's 40 athletes. Is that correct? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so much. And I guess you're a full-time coach right now. You got the accreditation from Athletics Australia as well because you did that course, I think, which I want to ask more about later. But Yeah, talk about how that started, when it started, because I assume you didn't do it before NCAAs.
So those few months where we left campus and was trying to find a flight home, I was, yeah, I was just going to do like online coaching, just like because for those few months to keep busy, because there wasn't really anything to do. And obviously didn't have a job because like you weren't allowed to work when you're in the NCAA or have any kind of income. So I was like, well, I want to try start making some money, but also just do something that I like because there's just nothing to do. And I think there were a couple of interests like online, but then like I really wanted to actually coach like one-on-one because obviously I couldn't in the NCAA. And so when I moved back, I reached out to the local little athletics. I never did little athletics, but there's a track kind of near where I live, and I asked them if I could like use their ground if anyone rocked up to some of my coaching things, and they said yes. And then they said that they would put like a little plug out for me on their website, even though I never went to their little A's, which is like lovely of them. And so I think probably halfway through maybe like July, August of 2020 is when I did like the very first session, and 2 people came. And yeah, and then just word of mouth, because like I never really advertised it anywhere. I didn't have any like flyers or post it on my socials because it was so small. I was like, there's nothing to advertise yet. But this word of mouth got bigger and bigger. And yeah, it's just growing so big. And it's like what I was like wanting when I first started coaching, like I wanted to coach like the elite level high school teenagers, the ones that want to go, you know, states, regionals, nationals, all that. But I thought it would take like 5 years to get to that. So I was just, anyone who wanted to come run, like I'd be happy to coach them. And so the fact that how fast it's growing, and how like much like dedication all the kids and the parents and everything have, and what I envisioned for like 5, 6, 7 years had happened within the first year. So it's just blown my mind how big it's gotten and how like on board everyone is with like the process. And because like I'm still new to coaching, like I've only been back in Australia 3 years as well, so how patient as well, because I'm always learning as a coach, like on the other side of the athlete coaching bench, like being both has really taught myself as an athlete like a lot. And yeah, no, it's just it's great. I love it so much.
Yeah. When and how did you get the accreditation for coaching?
I did the level 1 last year sometime, and then I did the level 2 earlier this year or late last year. Yeah. Because you can go up to there's like level 1, level 2, and then there's 4 is like advanced one. There are level 3s that I want to look at, but I just have to find a weekend that I'm free for it because it's over like a whole weekend. But they were really interesting. We had Peter Hannon, so Sally Pearson's coach's husband, was doing the level 2, and he was great. There's a lot of like tips and stuff that he's kind of said that I'm just like, I never thought of that. But they're really fun. They're really hands-on. We learn about like all the events, which I never thought I'd learn about sprinting or throwing, but I could maybe teach like a beginner how to chuck a discus now, which I never thought I would. But
Yeah.
no, they're great courses. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sure like a lot of it was also stuff that you knew already, just because you're quite experienced with running, you've done it for a long time. But I guess it's nice in a sense to have like an accreditation under your name, just so that, you know, you can prove that you know the stuff, even though you already do without the certification. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of good to have that if you are a coach. And yeah, I guess, you know, when someone hears that you have 40 athletes, some people might think, you know, is there a sweet spot in terms of like, you know, coaching a few people and like that many people? And I'm sure you're managing it like really well, but do you think there's a sweet spot, or are you happy to like take on even more than 40?
Well, even though there's 40 in the whole squad, because I coach every afternoon and Sunday morning. So Saturday's the only day I don't coach. But like each day, they don't have set days, but just on like locations and where people live, each day there's probably 10 to 15 at each session, because like usually like Monday and Wednesdays are the same group, and then Tuesday, Thursdays are like the other group. So it's kind of like split like into half or thirds or quarters, I'm not sure. But so yeah, at the most at training there's probably only, well, not only, but there's probably about 15. So it's a bit more manageable because 40 would be hectic all at once. But I can often run 2 sessions at once though, because I do like to keep it individual because there's some that do well off high mileage, low mileage, or where they're at different ages and how long they've been running. But so yeah, it's not, I do like to keep it more individual, and I'll group some people up if they're like, depending on where they're at in their running. But yeah, I mean, it's growing a lot recently as well. But I haven't hit the point where I'm like, I think I need to start putting a cap on it, but I definitely wouldn't want it to get where I can't give everyone equally what they deserve, or like the attention they deserve equally. So if it starts to get to that, then yeah, there might have to be like a cap that I put on just so that it's fair to everyone. But I haven't reached that just yet.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. And yeah, I'm sure it will continue growing. But looking at your stories on your like CMB Running Academy page, it just looks like you're still at the stage where you know every single one of your athletes really well, because you know all the stats and all that, and like what they went through to get to that result and stuff. Because yeah, you post on your story quite often on that account, and it's very individualized, and you give like a fair amount of shout outs to all your athletes. And I think it's pretty cool to see that, because when I first found out that you coach, I was just thinking of like just other generic coaching services, but I can see easily that compared to other people, you're taking it super serious, and you've been through a lot yourself as well, so you kind of know what the athletes are going through, which is also a cool experience to have, which is separating you from other people that haven't gone through all that. Because another cool thing that I saw, which we'll talk about with Tess, who's coming on in a bit as well, is that I'm pretty sure you guys both at different points, obviously because you're different ages, won the under 18 steeple, the 2K, and also in that same meet came third in either the 1500 or 3K or something like that, right? Which is kind of cool. Talk a bit about that. That's like a cool coincidence.
Yeah, I was actually my the very, very first coach in Australia, Brian Chapman, that I had. He came up after her race, actually, we're in the grandstands, and he's the one who pointed that out. He said, he's like, I think I think you're the only coach athlete duo in history that I can remember that had won the same event. And then Brian knows so much, so I was just like, you're probably right if you think so. But then yeah, when it turns out it was the exact same age, under 18s, and then almost the like exact same time, like I think it was 2 seconds apart, but even the milliseconds were so similar. But yeah, that was just really funny to like full circle look around on that. Yeah, but yeah, he pointed that out, and I was like, oh, that is a bit weird. It's cool, but yeah, it's a bit weird.
It's a super cool full circle moment. But I guess another question that came to mind when we were talking about that is, like, you've done a lot of different events. What is your favorite? I feel like you did tell me that you've had more success in the ends of the spectrum, so like the 800s and stuff, and also like, did you say 10K or something? But talk about that.
Yeah, I've done, my middle distances have still been like, I don't think I've reached my potential in those. But yeah, the 800, I really like the 800, but I also I never used to, but then last year when I started focusing on cross country to try make world cross country, started doing a lot more 10Ks, and now I actually really like 10K and cross country. But so I think, yeah, right now, which I never thought I'd say, the 800 and the 10K are probably my favorites, which is a really odd combination, but yeah.
Yeah, not everyone can say that. Like, I feel like all the elite athletes that I'm watching, like on the ladies' side, Jess Hall 1500 5K, Abby Caldwell 1500 800, I'd say. And yeah, it's like pretty specific. I feel like Izzy Batdor is pretty good at like 5, 10, half and stuff like that. So you kind of specialize in terms of like closer distances, not like the ends of the spectrum. So that's something unique you have, which is pretty cool. And yeah, we'll get on to Tess soon, but as a final question, because like I said at the start when I introduced you, you're supported by Hoka or sponsored, and also prepped. When did those come in? Because obviously during the NCAA, you probably weren't supported by them because you're not allowed to. So was it right after?
Yeah, it was in that few months period where I was waiting to find a flight home. because I technically graduated and I wasn't like a part of the NCAA anymore. I wasn't going to compete in the NCAA ever again. So yeah, it was in that those few months before I went home, and they were so good. Like I think because prep was very new. When they've got like some like Michelle Jenneke and Rose Davies, Izzy Doyle now, but back then it was very, very new. And Hoka wasn't as big in Australia. It's getting bigger now, but so they were really great at like jumping on board as well. And when I got back to Australia, like I had it all waiting there because they'd already sent it. So when I got home, it was like Christmas. I got to open up like everything, and it was just like encouraging because I was like sad to leave America, but in a way I felt like I had stuff waiting for me, like not stuff waiting for me, but I had some tools and stuff to like get straight back into running. So it just helped the transition a bit more, knowing that I had people and things supporting me already back in Australia, even though I hadn't been there for like 5 years pretty much. But yeah, no, it's great.
What's your favorite shoe by Hoka right now?
Ooh, the Rocket X2s. They're like road flats, like racing flats. They have like the carbon plate and the Meta Rocker, I'm pretty sure. They're kind of like their version of the Nike like Vapor Flies or Alpha Flies. But yeah, they're probably my favorite ones for sure.
Yeah, I popped my foot in one before in like a store, and yeah, it's super soft. I feel like it's pretty good, and I've heard a lot of good stuff about it, and some people are saying it's better than the Vaporfly, which is pretty cool. So it's nice to see all the brands sort of catching up to Nike in terms of the performance shoes. And I feel like training shoes, all the other brands have always been better than like your Peg 38 or whatever. So yeah, I guess let's get Tess on now because I want to ask her a few questions too.
All right.
So now we're joined by Tess after a little bit of a break. But yeah, can you quickly tell us about how you got into running?
Yeah, so from like a young age, I joined like Little Athletics and just learnt like the basic, I guess, like running form and like skills. And then from there, just got more competitive and just competed at school competitions. And yeah, just I guess started to increase like the training load and started to like enjoy it more. And yeah.
And what other sports have you been into, or have you always been really focused in running?
No, I've tried a few. I've played a bit of soccer and then a bit of netball as well. So yeah, a few team sports, yeah.
When did you join and get coached by Caitlin?
I think it's been just over 2 years, maybe nearly 3 years. And yeah, because I was sort of getting trained by my parents or just training with another friend, and I guess wanted to go to that next level and get some help, professional help and coaching. And yeah,
It's pretty cool to see how you developed like a nice, friendship outside of running as well with Caitlin, because obviously you're spending time with her outside of training too.
yeah.
But what's like your proudest achievement that you've gotten in running since you joined Caitlin's academy?
I would have to say nationals this year. Just being able to, I guess, put it all together and have a good race, a good couple of races. Because yeah, it'd been a while since I'd been able to do, I guess, like what I'd been working hard for. And yeah.
Is that the 2K steeple and the 3K or something?
Yeah. Yeah, those two.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
gold medal and bronze medal in those two events, which is pretty cool. And Caitlin, obviously you saw that live, right?
Yeah. I was in Brisbane. So.
Yeah, cool. And yeah, what were you thinking throughout the whole time?
Well, the 3K was first. It was like the Friday night, afternoon, night, I think it was.
Yeah.
And the age group's very fast. And just in Queensland alone is a very, very strong age group. And we're a little bit more focused, I think, on the steeple the next day because she got second the year before. So we were quite hoping to, just have a good run the next day because, the steeple was probably one of her favorite events. But then we're like, just let them drag you on the 3K and just see what happens and
just hang
on, yeah. And she'd been training really well, and so like I knew that the fitness was there. It's just how it falls on the day and where her head's at. But yeah, the halfway through there was a big group of them, and she was still there, and I was like, oh no, she's hanging on pretty well. And then I think that group split up maybe like a K to go, and there was a girl from Victoria kind of way out the front, and then there was a group of like 3 or 4, and then 600 to go, another Queenslander went, and then like Tess went with her, and I was like, oh okay. And then yeah, they both closed so fast and kind of pulled away from 4th and 5th, and yeah, I was nerve-wracking. I was like, has she gone too soon? But she's pretty good at reading races and how she feels, so I was like, if she's gone, she feels okay. But yeah, I was nervous. I was just like, oh, I hope you haven't gone too soon, or I hope you like I'm big on them like believing in yourself, like just if you can hurt in training, you can hurt in a race, like pushing yourself. But yeah, and then the time, I don't think I was even really worrying about the time or looking at the splits, and then when I saw it and it was quite a big PB, I was like, holy moly. But yeah, I was nervous, but like I knew she had it in her. Like afterwards I was like, I mean, looking back at the training, that makes sense, but
Yeah,
it's good that
sure.
she could see what like I was seeing in training.
And to give a bit of context to the listeners, how old are you right now, Tess? And what are your PBs? Because I'm sure a lot of people will be amazed at what you've run at your current age.
I'm 16, and my 3K PB is now, is it 9:42?
9:40.
9:40. My 2K steeple is 6:47. 1500 is 4:32. And yeah, that's about it.
And I think it's fair to say that every runner has gone through, injuries. You kind of have to go through it. And I feel like a lot of them come in your like early years, and then you slowly get more adapted to it. But what has been like a struggle or like an injury that you've been through to kind of get to where you are?
I had to have a bit of time off. Maybe like 1 to 2 years ago, I got a stress fracture in my leg. Yeah. But I guess I just got through it by cross training, just staying fit that way, and then I was able to come back pretty quickly. Yeah.
And obviously you have a coach that's been to the US for college. I'm just wondering, do you want to follow her footsteps? And are there any dream colleges that you're looking at, or are you happy to just see which coaches reach out and then see how you go?
Yeah, I think it'd be a pretty good opportunity. I've heard like a lot of good things about it from Caitlin, and yeah, I think just see what happens, and yeah.
For sure. It's cool that, Jen Lacaze has helped Caitlin, and then now Caitlin's going to help you. So there's like a whole string of, generations of runners from Queensland kind of helping each other out. So yeah, it's cool. I think the more years that go by, the more of that there will be. And it's going to get easier and easier for Australians to transition to the US, because like we talked about earlier on in the podcast, it is a bit hard to move countries and stuff, but, the more people that are familiar with it, the better. So yeah. And I guess tell me a few hobbies that you have outside of running, because I'm sure there are a few.
Outside of running, I just like to, I don't know, have a bit of downtime maybe. Just working around like training.
Schoolwork.
Yeah, schoolwork. Getting schoolwork done. That's not a hobby.
Okay.
And just spending time with family and friends, and yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Well, yeah, that's about all the questions I had for you. And I think you answered that very nicely. You're prepared for all the interviews that you'll have when you go to the NCAA and win some championships there. Because you will be interviewed then. But yeah, I guess, Caitlin, to wrap up the podcast, can you please talk about what you have coming up in the near future, what you're targeting also in the near future, next year or so? And yeah, have you had any like recent injuries or anything?
Yeah, I'm just coming off one really. I got a stress fracture in my fibula, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce that, in November last year. It was quite like I had probably been running on a stress reaction or probably a minor stress fracture for a while, but I've never had a stress fracture before. So I kind of just didn't think it was one. So it was quite bad when it actually did. I was in the middle of state 5K. Was when I think it actually fractured a lot more, because it suddenly like got like, yeah, it was so painful. And I just stopped running, and so yeah, that fractured. But then I had an ankle ligament, I forget what one it was, that also that was probably one of the most painful things, that they both kind of went at the same time. And even putting socks on the next morning, like anything like a blanket that touched my foot, it was so sore. But yeah, so I had a stress fracture last year, and then a couple, and then I was in a moon boot, obviously, and then I'd kind of done that up a bit too tight, I think, because then I started getting this pain in my calf, and I said to the kids at training, they probably thought I was the worst, because I kept complaining. I'm like, I have the worst calf cramp. Like, it's so painful. I was getting on and on about it. And then it got to the point where it was excruciating. Felt like someone was like screwing like something into my calf. And so then I called up the hotline. They're like, I think you need to go to hospital. It turns out I had a blood clot in my calf, and they think it was from the moon boot being up too tight. So I kind of did that to myself. But yeah, so I think as a fracture was bad, it took a long time to even be able to walk on it. And so, but I'm running again now. So I think I started running again, I don't know, probably a couple months ago, but did a lot of cross training, swimming. And I always had a negative look on cross training, I think, because in America, if you were asked to do cross training, it's because the coach thought you were overweight. Like, there's a joke that we would call it fat camp. So I always had a really bad on look of cross training. So really did not like it, but obviously it's the only way you can keep fit when you're injured. But so yeah, doing a lot. I started doing Pilates. That's helped a lot with like my form and everything. Now when I'm coming back, I can notice like a big difference. But yeah, the leg took a while, because between that, the ligament and the bone, there was just a lot going on in that lower leg. But yeah, but I had my first race back, it was like a week or so ago. It was state short course cross country. So it was only 4K on like a really tough course. And I won that one, which was kind of nice just to see where my fitness is at right now. It was fun to be back out there, but then I'm kind of dealing with like some shin splint post tib flare up. So I kind of didn't really run the week before that, or really last week, like the week after it, because that's just getting a bit angry. I think just because like my form has changed, my footfall is slightly different. So there's muscles that aren't getting used. But looking ahead, I think I'm doing the 10K at Gold Coast Marathon, like the festival thing, which should be I've only done like 2 10Ks in my life, so that'll be pretty new. And then New Zealand National Cross Country again in end of July, to hopefully go to Worlds, the next one, because that didn't happen because of my injury, because there's another World Cross Country in Croatia next year. So yeah, I'm just going to try go for that again, because I feel like I have unfinished business because my season got cut short.
Yeah, and it'll be cool because you live in Australia, so you know a lot of the elite runners in Australia that might go to that as well, but you'll be competing for New Zealand. So familiar faces, but like rivals in that competition kind of thing, which will be fun to see. And yeah, talking a bit more about that injury, I think you said it was like an anterior talofibular ligament. Yeah.
Yeah.
Based off of like research, because I knew this before anyway, like lateral ankle sprains are like the most common form of injury, just because the outside of the ankle, which is known as the lateral side, is a bit more prone to being rolled, because there's less like protective structures and also ligaments holding it together. So yeah, super common injury, but like it really hurts, from what I hear. And yeah, it must have sucked, but I'm glad that you won that recent race and you're kind of finding your feet again. Even though you have a bit of post-tib stuff as well now. But I feel like running is about like training a lot and then getting a niggle, and then you naturally change your form because your body knows where you're feeling niggles and you don't want to load that part up. And then when you
Yeah.
change your form, you compensate and then you work another part more, like you were saying earlier. So it's like a
Yeah.
constant struggle, like managing load and injuries. And like there's a lot of ways to do it, like changing your footwear and all that and stuff. And, you know, keeping on top of seeing your physio and working closely with them too. But yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully you can manage it because I'm going through the exact same thing right now. I keep getting injuries in different parts, but yeah, I'm managing it pretty well in the long-term side of things. So yeah, it's good. But
I was gonna say that's one thing that being injured, I've learned so much from, because beforehand, like my mileage before I got injured was probably anywhere from 110 to 120k a week, and I was doubling every day, which is, I mean, that might have been why I got injured. It probably was, but I hated having off days or not running, and because I was so negative towards cross training, like I'd never got on the bike or elliptical or swam. But one thing now that I think the injury made me realize, and even with like some of the athletes who've had injuries, I know it's like cliche saying less is more, because like that's what everyone tells you, but until you kind of experience that, like I know I didn't really like think that I needed that, but I'm doing only like 40-50k a week, if that now, and only like one session a week if I can do that, because I haven't recently because of the post-tip stuff. But yeah, my running, like I'm running so much less, but like feeling so much better. And that's just one thing that, yeah, and what you're saying, like running, like it got to be like looking ahead, or like, yeah, longevity in the sport, because you can't run every day, twice a day, because you will get injured or burnt out. But yeah, that's just one thing that I'm grateful for this injury, because I wouldn't have changed my training ways. But now I don't worry if I have to not run for a week, or instead of run, get on the elliptical or the bike. So that's just one thing and also help the coaching as well. Like some kids, I'm like, hey, try this, because I never would have done it before, but my kid tried it. And so yeah, it just helped me as an athlete, but also as a coach, help some of the kids with what they're going through, which I wouldn't have done if I'd not got injured. I don't think so.
yeah, for sure. I feel like there's like so much more we can talk about with you because you've gone through a lot and stuff, and I want to go into more detail in a future episode. But to kind of wrap up this podcast, obviously, I think CMB Running Academy is like really cool. You even have like I saw backpacks with the
Yeah.
Hoka logo and the Prepped logo,
Yeah.
which is so cool. But just to give a bit of a shout out to that, let's do it in a creative way. So I'm gonna get Tess to tell the viewers and listeners why you should join the CMB Running Academy, and then I'll let Caitlin explain where you can reach out to her and stuff like that. So Tess, why should people join the CMB Running Academy?
You should join the CMB Running Academy, because it's not all serious. It's like lots of fun, just making, I guess, lifelong friends, and just being able to trust your coach and have just normal conversations, not just about running. Yeah, it's not all just about running. And yeah.
And Caitlin, where can people find your running academy, and how can people reach out to you?
We're on Instagram. So I think there's like a link in that has like another link to the Facebook page, so Facebook page as well, and a website. But people usually just message me on Instagram or like on Facebook, or on like the website. There's like a inquiry box thing. So yeah, either of those. It's the name on Instagram and Facebook, and the website is just CMB Running Academy. But yeah, anywhere on theirs, just message me and I'll probably get back to you very quickly.
Cool, sweet. Well, yeah, thank you for coming on the pod. I definitely want to do part 2 sometime down the line, but thanks a
Thank
lot.
you very much. It was really fun. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.